Saturday, July 3, 1875, on this very courthouse square, the original Civil War Soldiers Monument was dedicated, a ceremony led by Iowa's Civil War Governor, Samuel J. Kirkwood. The Muscatine Journal reported there were 10,000 people on the square. I think we have about that many today. We're looking good. They were worried about the weather that day. They were talking about rain locations. The Journal reports that the sky was dark and threatening. In the morning, everybody woke up to loud thunder, and the veterans were out there shooting off all kinds of stuff, so there was thunder of every sort going on that morning. The parade that was planned up 2nd Street had to happen on the sidewalk. They made it over here to the square, the sky cleared, and they had a wonderful day of festivities. As Governor Kirkwood has reported, unveiled the monument. We're going to move this along as quickly and appropriately as we can. We know you're all hot. I introduce Pastor Colette Gould from the Island and Letts United Methodist congregations for the invocation.
Let us pray. O God, we have gathered here in your presence with friends and family. We express our gratitude to all who supported the effort for a new Civil War monument in this place. May we never forget not only the 513 from this county who died in the Civil War, but also all who have given their lives in the service of our country, these United States. May this day be a constant reminder of what draws us together in unity and community, love of you, O God, and love of neighbor. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Invite everybody to stand, if you're able, for presentation of colors, the raising of the American flag, and singing of the national anthem.
Please sing with me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home
Let's have more applause for the Color Guard and the Honor Guard. I'll apologize in advance if I miss a beat on any of the protocol and pageantry here, but it's a day, as we planned it, that is so rich in heritage that protocol and pageantry are in order, and it's 21st century. You're out here in shorts, and it's the kind of day it is. So I will make the briefest of introductions as our speakers come forward. The first person we've asked to speak on behalf of the community, if one person could represent the entire community in some way, is Keith Porter, who chaired a committee for a Great Initiatives Award on behalf of the Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine. Keith Porter.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for being here, Mr. Governor. Thank you for all the distinguished guests, and in particular, a special thanks to our veterans who are here today. As Dan mentioned, today I'm speaking on behalf of the Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine. I've been a board member there for a couple of years, and every day I am more impressed with what this organization brings to Muscatine. So many of the public goods we enjoy in Muscatine benefit from the Community Foundation, and that includes this fantastic Civil War memorial that we are dedicating today. The Community Foundation establishes, manages, and invests dozens of charitable funds for projects across the county. And indeed, a significant portion of the funds raised for the Civil War Memorial passed through the Community Foundation. The Community Foundation also gives away tens of thousands of dollars through our Muscatine County Regranting Program. The program was created by the Iowa Legislature and the Iowa Department of Economic Development, and these funds are only available to qualified, accredited community foundations like ours here in Muscatine. Last year, the Regranting Program gave $2,500 to this Civil War Memorial. Last year, the Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine began our Great Initiative Award to honor people in this community who are inspiring leaders, who spark new projects for the greater good of our community. The first Great Initiative Award went to Shirley Jean Drake. Shirley Jean's reach into the charitable and civic communities sparked many lasting initiatives where her impact continues to be felt. And then just a few days ago, we were proud to announce that the second annual Great Initiative Award was being given to Lee Miller, the leader and founder of the Civil War Memorial Project. Lee was recognized for his selfless efforts to make the greater Muscatine area a better place to live. Lee directed the efforts to replace the monument, educate the public, memorialize the Muscatine County citizens who served in the Civil War, and preserve our heritage for future generations. William Faulkner, yes, let's give Lee a round of applause. William Faulkner is a great American novelist. I should note that his people fought on the other side of this war. But William Faulkner said, "The past isn't dead, it isn't even past." He was reminding us that history, that everything which has come before shapes who we are right now. We cannot escape it. In the year 1875, as Dan mentioned, people gathered on this very spot to dedicate the memorial to the Civil War and those who died to preserve our Union. I don't know much about how that memorial came to be, but I'm completely sure that there was a group of inspired people and a leader like Lee Miller who made it happen. 50 years later, in the year 1925, again on this very spot, it happened again. A new group picked up the torch from those back in 1875 and reconsecrated the Civil War Memorial. And here we are today, in 2011, holding the torch of history high and feeling very deeply our connection back to 1925 and 1875 and the sacrifice of the war itself. On behalf of the Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine, all of our board and staff members, I want to congratulate Lee Miller on the Great Initiatives Award, but moreover, we want to congratulate and extend a sincere thanks to everyone who made the Civil War Memorial possible. Please join me in giving these great leaders and volunteers a round of applause.
Thank you, Keith. Next, we ask for some remarks on behalf of our nation. We invited a number of our elected officials in Congress. We have our own representative, Iowa Representative David Loebsack. He'll be the next speaker. I wanted to read a few words that came to us from United States Senator Tom Harkin. And by the way, I will say, we also received regrets from both Senator Harkin and Senator Grassley. I don't have a copy of what Senator Grassley sent in the email, but it was complimentary. I wanted to read a few words from Senator Harkin here. During the Civil War, the state of Iowa provided invaluable support to the Union Army efforts to defeat Southern separatism and racially driven injustices. The food and supplies that our state donated were instrumental in securing a win for justice and peace. But it was the 13,001 Iowa soldiers, I've seen other numbers, but that's the right ballpark, who lost their lives that provided some of the most honorable help for the Union cause. Our continued commemoration of their valiant service and sacrifice is imperative in understanding the vital role Iowa has played in shaping United States history in the past and the role it is playing in the present. And he extends his greetings on our special occasion. And now, if I may, on behalf of the nation, the Honorable David Loebsack, 2nd District Congressman.
Thanks, Dan. I really do appreciate that introduction, and it is a great honor to be here. I want to also thank the governor for being here, and Representative Kaufman. I think the mayor is back here somewhere as well. That's quite a statue, I have to say, and I just really commend the members of the Civil War Memorial Committee and all the other folks who were involved in this. It really is quite an honor to be here today. It's a fantastic event. It's a great day, of course, for the Muscatine community, and we wouldn't be here if the entire community had not come together to make today a reality. And of course, it's because of the generous donations of the community, the hard work of the Civil War Memorial Committee, Iowans' commitments to honoring all those who have served our nation, that the Muscatine County Courthouse is now graced by what is, I understand, a 40-foot, 30,000-pound statue, if I got the numbers correct. Dan will correct me if I don't have those numbers correct. It's going to stand sentry over the courthouse lawn for years to come. The statue's predecessor, of course, was here, as we know, for quite some time. This one has his work cut out for him, I guess, given how long the previous one was here. And this soldier atop the statue also represents the 513 Muscatine County soldiers who died in the Civil War, and they were first memorialized, as we've heard, in 1875, as our nation was really still rebuilding from the most divisive time in our history. And I think, given that almost 150 years later, the city of Muscatine came together and through what I know was a long and sometimes arduous process, ensured that those soldiers' memories would live on, is a testament, I think, to our commitment to never forget those who have fought and sacrificed for our nation. And I think that message resonates particularly strongly today as we have thousands of Iowans overseas in various conflicts, and in particular the 2,800 National Guard troops we have in Afghanistan, who will be coming home during the month of July. And of course, we're all going to welcome them, and we're all going to be thinking about not only them, but their families and their communities as well. They, like generations of veterans before them, have put on our nation's uniform to defend our freedom so that we may live in peace here at home. And as we gather today and over the course of Independence Day weekend to honor the veterans of the past, let us also keep in our thoughts and prayers those who are serving, and in particular, their families. I think that's really, really critical, as I mentioned. So after we leave today, let us remember that every time we look up at this statue, that freedom is not free, that it has been renewed time and again by generations of Iowans and generations of Americans. And all too often, through, I think, almost imaginable sacrifice, as we've seen most recently in Afghanistan and Iraq. And to all those who have served our nation and serve today, I want to thank all of you. And as I said again, for the third time, your families as well. To all those who worked so hard to bring this day about, congratulations to you and the entire Muscatine community, and thank you for your dedication in ensuring that the memory of those 513 fallen Muscatine County soldiers lives on. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. Our next speaker is David Lamb. David Lamb is a Civil War historian and the commander of one of the units in the Sons of the Union Volunteers of the Civil War, the SUVCW. Whew. There are several medallions on the monument. You can see when you look up close. On three sides, it's similar to the last version, but we have a new medallion representing the SUVCW who've joined in our effort this time around. They are the successor organization to the Union veterans, the Grand Army of the Republic that was formed, fraternal organization that was formed in 1866 at the end of the war and continued until 1956 when the last Union veteran died. They are the officially designated successor organization. So on behalf of descendants of the Civil War soldiers, David Lamb.
First of all, I'd like to tell you, you have no idea how lucky you are that it's this hot today. Winston Churchill, one of my favorite authors, once said, "There is no sound in the world so melodious as that of a human voice, especially mine." And I've been accused of that from time to time myself. However, not today. Congressman Losbach, Governor Branstad, Speaker Kaufman, Supervisor Kelly, Mr. Miller, members of the Monument Committee, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a singular honor to be asked to make a few comments on behalf of our ancestors on this glorious occasion. I would first like to say that because of the heat of the day and the wearing of wool uniform, my comments will be extraordinarily brief. But before I begin that, I have two pieces of business that I want to beg your forbearance on. First of all, on behalf of the 49th Iowa Volunteer Infantry, some of whom you see behind me dressed in these wool suits like this, and all Iowans who cherish our magnificent Civil War heritage, I am very honored to be able to present to the Speaker of the Iowa House of Representatives, the Honorable Jeff Kaufman, the Loyal Legion of Abraham Lincoln Award for 2011 for his extraordinary efforts in securing the refunding of the Iowa Battle Flags project for the next 2 fiscal years. By his personal insistence on perpetuating the conservation efforts on these 324 flags of our fathers, Jeff Kaufman has worked diligently and to see to it that the work will continue unabated on the conservation efforts to maintain these priceless artifacts of Iowa's military heritage. If I could have the speaker step up. On behalf of the 49th Iowa, sir, congratulations.
Thank you. You know what I think about that. I told you. I appreciate that.
I have one more piece here. In keeping with the modern day military, we have a challenge coin from the birth date of Abraham Lincoln to present to the Speaker as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
I had never met the Speaker until this morning. We have exchanged emails for the last 2 or 3 months. I've got to say we do have a vested interest somewhat. Myself and a couple other members of my regiment here work part-time at the Historical Society on those battle flags. And I can't tell you what an honor it is to stand there and touch those pieces of history that flew over those fiery battlefields that our great-grandfathers served on 150 years ago. As a second piece of business, I would like to introduce to you 3 gentlemen who are here with us today who consistently play a continuing role in keeping alive the memories of our ancestors who served the causes of union and freedom during the American Civil War. Firstly, our National Senior Vice Commander of the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, the Honorable Donald Palmer, is with us. Donald is an Iowan himself, and at least one of his ancestors served in the 11th Iowa, whose flag is on display now at your own historical art center and museum. The Department of Iowa commander for the Sons of Union Veterans, the Honorable James Braden, is with us. Jim is also a member of the 49th Iowa. Normally doesn't look this pretty when he's in the ranks. And last but not least, and no less honorable, is Brother Tom Gard from the Des Moines Dodge Camp. Tom, is our monuments officer for the state of Iowa and has spent several years traveling around the state and the nation photographing and recording Iowa's numerous monuments. 150 years ago this very day, the shots on Fort Sumter were still reverberating across this nation. And the nation was about to step into the abyss of the four most violent years in our history, what would be the all-consuming flames of a genuine American Holocaust. Here in Iowa, the very first troops to enter into federal service came from Dubuque, Iowa, in response to President Lincoln's call for volunteers. He believed the war would last 90 days. I think all presidents in all times have thought it'd be over by Christmas and the boys would be home. It didn't work out that way. Iowa was very much the backwater of American civilization in 1860. And the census figures are inexact, but somewhere around 600,000 people lived in this small state. We'd only been here as a state for 14 years. And by extrapolation, approximately 132,000 men of military age lived here. And at that time, that was considered to range from 14 to 45. Of that 132,000, 76,534 stepped forward and raised their hands and said, "I will go." 13,000 of them would not return from those battlefields. And for Iowans, the march to that war often began at this liquid superhighway you have about 2 blocks from here. The Mississippi River was realized to be probably the most important route for moving men, material, supplies, ammunition, and food down to the armies that it would take to encircle the South and eventually strangle them into submission. That would take 4 long and bloody years, and these efforts would ultimately lead to the preservation of our constitutional union and the freeing of an entire portion of an enslaved humanity. In 1866, just 1 year after the war ended and the guns fell silent, a physician named Benjamin Stevenson in Illinois founded a fraternal benevolent association comprised of veterans of the Union Army in order to care for the widows and orphans left behind by the 628,000 who perished in that war. In those days, there was no Veterans Administration. There was no one to care for these people. And the veterans banded together in a group they called the Grand Army of the Republic for that very purpose. Out of that organization, ultimately, those veterans enlisted their sons and grandsons into an organization called the Sons of Veterans Reserve. And they drilled them as militia, and some of those units actually reported and fought in the next war that this nation would be involved in, the Spanish-American War in 1899. The Grand Army of the Republic grew to be an enormously politically powerful organization, was the only veterans organization in history, as a matter of fact, to at one time have an office in the Iowa Capitol building just 2 doors down from the governor's. We don't carry that same sort of political clout today, but we're still here, and we still try to keep our eye on activities that commemorate the service of our forefathers, such as this. And today, we, the descendants of these warriors, are extremely honored to know that that spirit of remembrance of their efforts is alive and well in towns like Muscatine, Iowa, where so many of your citizens, not just those in uniform, but your merchants and the families of those who left here to go off and fight, played a significant role in that war. On behalf of those who served and of those who remember, we thank you for the effort that you have undertaken to restore this beautiful monument so that future generations can know of their sacrifice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. President Abraham Lincoln presented an address on the Gettysburg battlefield that was shorter than anything any of us are saying up here today. There's nothing more fitting on such an occasion than a recitation of that address, and I dare say a number of us, sometime in our lives, tried to memorize this. Our Muscatine County Civil War Monument Committee decided early on that we weren't just a fundraising project, we were an educational effort, and this is an educational effort that continues through the next 4 years of Civil War sesquicentennial commemoration. We've already been in a number of the schools of the counties, and we'll be doing a lot more of that. We've met wonderful young people who are taking to this information and who are excited. We ran into some young people who wanted to get up and recite for us, their visitors, from the Gettysburg Address. And so we didn't have much trouble deciding who to nominate when the time came for someone to do that in the program. I'm pleased now to present Chloe Hartman and Brady Trego for their recitation.
The Gettysburg Address, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, November 19th, 1863. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated can long endure.
We are met here on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper we should do this.
But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little know nor long remember what we say here, but can never forget what they did here. It is for us living rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought have thus far so nobly advanced.
It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we shall take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave those honored dead, for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. That we are highly resolved highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation under God shall give new birth to freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth.
Thank you, Brady and Chloe. Our next speaker is another of those who needs very little introduction. We've asked State Representative Jeff Kaufman, our neighbor from Cedar County, known to many of us as a longtime instructor at Muscatine Community College, a very popular instructor at Muscatine Community College. We've asked him to be our keynote speaker. Some of us know him as a politician. That part's already been referred to. I understand you did some good work this spring on the Hill there. Others of us know him as the former president of the Cedar County Historical Society. I'm somebody who's fallen into the dark hole of genealogical research and family history and studying my own Civil War ancestors and so on, and I appreciate Jeff as a fellow, as a colleague in that cause. And as it turns out, Jeff likes to brag about the many generations his family has been living on that farm in Cedar County. Well, I can't claim it's a direct ancestor, but I have a shirt-tail relative who lived on the land before his people did. And I'm proud to say that that man, Charles Whittlesey, served in the upper house of the very first Iowa Territorial Legislature representing Cedar County and some other areas. He was a Whig from New England, and he did his darndest to keep Iowa from having any exclusion laws against black and mulatto citizens on the books in the first place. That his effort to get that tabled failed. So nothing more needs to be said about State Representative Jeff Kaufman, educator, legislator, and historian. Jeff.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here with all of you, Governor, Congressman. I was telling the governor, if you saw me lean over and whisper, he wondered what a keynote address means. I says, usually that means somewhere between 10 minutes and an hour. He says, if I go anywhere beyond the minimum, he will personally be back in Muscatine campaigning against me next year. So I marked my pen through because he got my attention. I am so proud of my family association with this county for 7 generations, and I'm content that I will live and work here for the rest of my life. My 4th great-grandmother took a final walk before she died, so the family legend says, at age 99, and it was in Muscatine County, along the streets of Wilton, to bid farewell to her neighbors and friends. 4 of her grandsons were Union soldiers, and 2 of them came home. The freedom to live, to raise a family, to celebrate the milestones in history, all of these opportunities are a privilege. And you veterans in the crowd today gave me this privilege, gave me this freedom, gave all of us this freedom and privilege. And the men and women whose names are inscribed on this monument behind me sacrificed so that we may all be free. In some cases, they gave their life. And for the young people in the crowd today, let me repeat myself. They gave their life for you. You might be saying to yourself, but they didn't even know me. My response is, that's exactly why this is special and why this indeed is a sacred day. President John Kennedy stated that, quote, a nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men and women it honors, the men and women it remembers. Well, Muscatine County, you've revealed yourself today, and you should be proud. The first dedication service was held here in 1875. Governor Samuel Kirkwood dedicated the first monument. He too was to return as governor who had previously served this state. He had been our Civil War governor, and he had led this state through some of the most tumultuous and historic times in our history. Your presence here today, Governor Branstad, is greatly appreciated. It makes it special. In 1885, Governor Kirkwood gave a speech to in Iowa City to the Crockers, Iowa Brigade Reunion. What he said is still a major lesson for all of us today. Listen very carefully to this speech, way more than 100 years old, and tell me if it doesn't fit this day perfectly. And I quote Samuel Kirkwood, "But there is one thing in connection with our Civil War that must not be forgotten. It was not a prize fight in which the brutal sluggers pounded each other for applause of others as brutal as themselves. and for the money that went to the winner. It was a conflict of political ideas that reached to the very foundation of our system of government. And we must never forget that in that conflict, we were right, and those with whom we fought were wrong. All of us soldiers and citizens should see to it that the children growing up amongst us shall learn that lesson, shall learn to teach it to their children, and they to their children, until the time shall have come when all our people shall believe that this broad and magnificent domain of ours is one country and only one. Well, God bless you, Governor Kirkwood. You're as right in 2011 as you were in 1885. These boys died for ideals that emanated from the very foundation of our nation. And yes, there sometimes is a right side and a wrong side, and in the Civil War, Muscatine County was on the right side. The crucial lesson of this day is not just about the past, though it's about today and tomorrow. This day involves looking back in history, but we do so in order to guide us and direct us. Our state sent over 76,000 men to serve in the military, many in combat regiments in the Western armies. Over 13,000 died of wounds. At Lincoln's first call for troops after Fort Sumter, Muscatine County men enlisted at a number more than that which was requested of our county. Camp Strong, down on the Muscatine Island, became active, and the sacrifice of Muscatine County became intertwined with national headlines detailing places like Wilson's Creek, Shiloh, Vicksburg, Kennesaw Mountain, Chattanooga, and Atlanta, just to name a few. The second stanza of the Battle Hymn of the Republic says, "I have seen him in the watchfires of 100 circling camps. They have builded him an altar in the evening dews and damps. I can read his righteous sentence by the dim and flaring lamps. His day is marching on." Two themes emerge in this verse and are still true today. First, they were individuals around those fires. They were Muscatine County boys around those fires. They were brothers, fathers, and sons. And second, they were inspired by Almighty God. We must never forget our Civil War heroes. Hundreds of Muscatine County men gave their lives in this war. I believe Congressman Robert Cousins, one of the greatest of the U.S. representatives in Iowa history, and he was our congressman at the turn of the century, in an 1892 speech, he conjured up an image of a beautiful reunion of Union soldiers. Every soldier and sailor and pilot in the crowd today, I think, can appreciate the yearning of one more moment of bonding with his comrades. And when I say this quote, I like to think of those boys behind me engraved on that monument as standing here and living out Robert Cousins' dream. Robert Cousins said, "Sometimes I think, what if all the brave and gallant boys who sleep beneath the shadow of the flag they fought to save could stand again upon the sacred soil that covers them and see the glory of the country as it is today? What if from the stern, relentless bondage of the grave a furlough could be had? If for only one brief day, for them to look again upon the land they left and say, 'Tis well we died, the Union still exists,' and to look once more into the faces of their friends, into the tearful eyes of loved ones long ago, to grasp again the hands of comrades, the old boys with whom they trudged for many a weary mile, and camped and cooked and fought and laughed and died. I'd like to see that grand army of the Republic one more time. I'd like to see the mothers meet their soldier sons and the daughters meet their fathers. I'd like to see the sorrow-furrowed faces of faithful love illuminated with the happiness of hope's reward. We will give our monument this kind of life when we honor those names that are inscribed on it. We don't have to worry about inspiration. Their lives and their profound sacrifice will act as an eternal flame. The message is clear and timeless. And so today we stand here in Muscatine County, from the flatlands of Wilton to the Wapsie Valley of West Liberty, from the village of Fruitland to the hills of Mount Pelier and Fairport, and from the sparkling waters of this beautiful Pearl City, our precious Muscatine, we will remember. And not only remember, but this monument bears witness that we will sacrifice when asked. And when our last breath is drawn, the sweetness and calm of Muscatine County will carry us home, just as it carried home our fallen heroes. I feel so fortunate to be right here, right now, sharing this moment with all of you. And I have a final prayer on this beautiful afternoon. It's based on the mystery and eternal nature of an almighty God, the same God they talked about around the campfires during the Civil War. My prayer is that our heroes are watching us right now, and as they peer over the ramparts of heaven and gaze upon their friends and their family, their neighbors and former comrades, they are content. In fact, they're even happy. And in my prayer, the sounds of our rededication service drift to their heavenly home. In my prayer, they are proud of today, not a loud, boastful pride, but a quiet pride, the kind that is as strong as the granite and marble of that monument behind us. I know there's supposed to be no tears in heaven, but today in my prayer, there are a few gentle tears in their eyes. And among our gathered heroes, a hushed whisper passes from soldier to soldier. For you see, today, Muscatine County, their prayer has been answered. We have remembered. And as long as we continue to remember together and support the family and the legacy of our fallen heroes, then our job here has been done. I like to think that our soldier angel behind me, now overlooking Muscatine, reaches to touch the hand of our soldier boys in heaven. And from his perch, he's going to watch, he's going to hope, and he's going to wait. Lincoln said at Gettysburg, the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but we need to dedicate to the great task remaining before us. What is our great task? Oliver Wendell Holmes, a Civil War veteran, said, quote, "We have shared the incommunicable experience of war. We have felt, we still feel the passion of life to its top. In our youths, our hearts were touched with fire." All you veterans do share an experience that I will never fully comprehend, that many of us will not fully comprehend, but we will try, and when we do, we will honor our Civil War veterans. And to the veterans in the crowd today, thank you, for when we shake your hand today, we shake their hand as well. Second, we can encourage our leaders to not forget. I'm happy to report that this session, a Republican-led House with Sands, Lofgren, and myself, and a Democratic-led Senate with Senators Black, Hahn, and Courtney, and our governor ensured that the Civil War Battle Flags project will continue uninterrupted. And the final quote I want to make today is a quote that inspires all of us to continue with that legacy of those battle flags. It comes from John Lacey's address. He presented it when the flags were returned permanently to the custody of the state. Here's what he said, and listen very, very carefully, because I think within this is the message of why we're all here today. He said, quote, "By the presence of these colors, I'm reminded of the tender memory of Nathaniel Baker, Adjutant General of Iowa, and the story he used to tell. One day in the early years after the war, as he was sitting in his office, which was decorated by these battle flags, a lady dressed in deep mourning clothes came in and asked to see the flag of the 20th Iowa. The general pointed it out to her, and she stood for a while in silence and meditation. It hung above her. In a quiet voice, she asked, 'May I touch it?' General Baker moved a table below it, upon which she climbed, and pressing the silken folds to her bosom and lips, she burst into tears and said, 'Pardon my emotion, General, but my only boy died under this flag.' Thirdly, and finally, we must always keep sacrifice alive in the minds of our community and in our children. And what this says to us, and what this monument says to us, is that there are times when common people like you and I are called upon to do uncommon things. So today we remember the way that Lincoln asks us to remember, with malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive to finish this work. And for all those kids in the crowd today, I want you to take just a second to look at this monument right now. If your parents or grandparents out there, I want you to nudge those kids, because when you're old and gray, I want you to remember this moment. Because what we're asking you to do today is we're asking you someday to do the same thing when we're no longer able. And your job isn't done yet. And kids, I hope you're still listening. We want you to ask your children to do the same thing again. All that is left now is to join together in a spirit of gratitude, in the spirit of grateful admiration at our county and the sacrifice our county made 150 years ago. And at the end of the ceremony today, when the echo of taps whispers through our pearl on the Mississippi. Let that music rise to the heavens, and let all the angels with us sing. Well done, faithful sons and daughters of Muscatine County, because today we proclaim in one voice to them, to our soldier boys, we will never forget. Thank you.
You'll be glad to know the entire proceedings are being videotaped and will air on public access television, no doubt, again and again. Some of us have also talked about the possibility of a commemorative booklet when this is all over, and Jeff, I'm glad that much of that was written out. What a stellar address. You know, they used to do this in the 19th century. They'd come to political meetings for hours and hours and listen to this kind of rhetoric. I heard that Jeff was rehearsing this and taking it quite seriously, and I won't say what I was told about it. But I thought that was fantastic, and you don't often get to hear a speech like that anymore. Speaking of the videotaping, we worked awfully hard pulling together 100 different pieces of information for the program brochure. I hope you've all got one. If not, I think there are probably more up here at the back of the canopy. And in the interest of time and the heat of the day, we've decided to dispense with a little bit of time we were going to devote to naming a lot of the people listed on there as special guests. You can read that for yourself if you get a copy of the program. There are a couple of items we left off that must be mentioned, though. The Muscatine Arts Center was a significant contributor of dollars, as well as all they've been doing this year with their own Civil War Sesquicentennial exhibit and programming. And so we would be remiss if we didn't recognize the Muscatine Arts Center in addition to the other contributors. Also, there were so many, and this is one of those cases where you don't dare start listing everybody because you know you're leaving them out. But so much labor was donated, so much hands-on labor, as an old monument was taken down and a new one erected. Broder's Excavating is another one we failed to put on there. And finally, a special mention to Muscatine Power and Water, donating lift trucks. We didn't have to pay for that, and the employees who operated those trucks for hours, taking one down, putting another up, that was contributed. Along Muscatine Power and Water, MPW Digital TV is providing this service, and let me see, Chad, to make sure I get this right. The video of this event will be broadcast on MPW Digital TV Access Channel 9 next week. Is that right? Next weekend, not this weekend yet, but a week from now. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10 a.m., 3 p.m., 8 p.m. Those services are being provided by the City of Muscatine, MPW Digital TV, and Muscatine Community College. And I might add, the platform, the sound system that's working. Thank you, Chad Bishop. I failed to get it in the program that the musicians call themselves Fun with Brass. I hope you were here in time to hear them, and they've agreed to play a little bit at the end of the program. The courthouse is not open at this moment, but at the end of the program, Supervisor Tom Furlong has agreed to open the courthouse for a bit. There are restrooms in there, and you can see the county's old Civil War cannon in the rotunda there. And finally, I'm aware, and I was one of the proofreaders, I'm going to fess up that I am aware of a single typo literally carved in stone. You know that expression, well, it's not carved in stone. Well, we're so proud that in the additional names that were left off in 1875 and 1925, we think we've done the research and got every last soldier from Muscatine County who died in the war listed on that monument. Somehow, can't figure out how, there is one name on there of a man who survived the war, and his brother was the one who died. And of all things, it's in the African American regiment that got left off entirely the first time around. We were so pleased that the 1st Iowa Infantry of African descent, the later designated 60th United States Colored Troops, when you see the name George Anderson, should have been John. You know, what can I say? We may find more typos over time. I think I'm going to dispense with any other program notes and turn to the ceremony part, the final dedication here, I'm so glad that Representative Kaufman read the passage from Governor Kirkwood about teaching our children and teaching our grandchildren, and that we were right and they were wrong. And sometimes war settles these things in a horrible way. Now, I've had people ask me, Dan Clark, what are you doing working with a war monument? I came to Muscatine many years ago to work at the Stanley Foundation, to work for world peace. I worked in that dark little building over there, that one-story brick building, and I used to tell people when they came to Muscatine, find the county courthouse, find the Civil War cannon on the lawn, which used to be located over there, sight down the barrel, and that's our front door. So here, I've devoted much of my adult life to nurturing peace and preventing wars. I see no way to build peace without coming to terms with war. I say there's little that's more important for Americans who would be peacemakers than learning about the Civil War on our own soil, among our own people, our own good people who couldn't figure out any better way to end the evil of slavery and save the Union their ancestors had given them. Hating war and working for peace are not the opposite of remembering and honoring the sacrifice of warriors. It all runs together. Working on this project with this group of men and women has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. Thank you, each one. Thanks to all here who have helped in any way. And now it's my great honor to turn over the platform to Lee Miller, the guy who had the first modest idea that we ought to bring that monument up to date and remember the sacrifice. Lee Miller.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody points fingers at me, but it wasn't me, it was a whole team of dedicated individuals, and I'd like to thank them. First, it's an honor to be on the stage with such a distinguished bunch of guests. Thank you all very much. I was going to stand up here and read a long list of names of all our special guests today, but it is so hot, and out of respect of the governor, Mr. Kaufman, and Lieutenant Lamb, I think I'm going to make it real short here. And I'd just like to ask all of our special guests, the VFW American Legion, from out of town and locally, and all our local civic leaders, just everybody stand and take a bow, if you would, please. We'll just do it as a group, and this will save a lot of time and get us out of the heat a lot quicker. And now, on behalf of the Civil War Memorial Committee, I would like to present this monument to Ms. Cass Kelly, the chair of the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. But there's one thing I forgot to tell the supervisors about this monument. It comes with a maintenance warranty. The warranty states that it must be power washed once every 100 years.
Okay.
So if you'll send me an email or call me, I'll make sure it gets done.
Excellent, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you, Kath.
Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you very much. On behalf of Muscatine County Board of Supervisors, the past, the present, and the future citizens of Muscatine County, I proudly and with great honor accept this beautiful monument. I would also like to express my appreciation to Mr. Miller, reminding us of the missing names that needed to be added to the monument. After time and people getting on with the monotony of their lives, it's very easy to forget that the job hadn't been completed. And that also reminded me of something I had read, and if I may, I would like to read it to you. The Pledge of Allegiance from the Red Skelton Hour, January 14th, 1969. I remember this one teacher. To me, he was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time. He had such wisdom. We were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and he walked over. Mr. Laswell was his name, and he said, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. Me, an individual, a committee of one. Pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and devotion. To the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Where she waves, there is respect because your loyalty given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. Of the united, that means that we have all come together. States, individual communities,